Did Meghan Markle just push the royal family one step too far? That's the question everyone is asking right now. Imagine being at the center of one of the most scrutinized families in the world, knowing that every move you make, every word you speak, is instantly dissected by millions. Now imagine asking for something that seems, on the surface, simple, a new title, a seemingly small request, a formal recognition, and suddenly, the walls of tradition crumble around you. The phone calls stop. The messages go unanswered. Charles and William are furious, and the reaction is immediate, decisive, and unprecedented. All contact with Meghan is banned. No negotiations. No compromise. Just a wall. But why did a single request spark such fury? What could have triggered this explosive response from the people who are supposed to protect and guide her? And what does this mean not just for Meghan, but for the monarchy as a whole? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all started with a message, a note sent quietly through palace channels, one that would ignite one of the most tense confrontations in modern royal history. We've seen Meghan challenge before, but this was different. There was no room for discussion, no room for debate. Charles, the king, and William, the heir, acted in unison, and their anger wasn't subtle. Sources say the meetings were tense, voices raised, and at times, barely restrained. For a family known for their composure, the storm this request caused was extraordinary. But the details of that storm, the whispers behind palace doors, the text messages leaked to journalists, the private calls intercepted by staff, remain mostly unseen by the public. Until now. So why now? Why has this particular request caused such an unprecedented reaction? The answer lies in a combination of timing, context, and the fragile balance between tradition and personal ambition. Meghan has always been a polarizing figure, celebrated by some and scrutinized relentlessly by others. She has challenged the status quo before, pushed boundaries, and, in many ways, forced the monarchy into the modern era. But titles, protocol, and the rigid hierarchy of royal etiquette are not something that bend easily. And in this case, bending was not an option. The request itself, though simple in wording, carried layers of meaning. On the surface, it was a straightforward ask, a new title. But behind that request lay decades of tension, unresolved grievances, and questions about legacy, recognition, and influence. Titles in the royal family are not just names. They are symbols of power, privilege, and approval. To ask for a new one is to step into a complex web of expectations and scrutiny, and Meghan's timing could not have been more sensitive. According to insiders, the palace saw this not as a request, but as a challenge to hierarchy, to protocol, and to the authority of both Charles and William. Imagine being in Meghan's shoes for a moment. A woman who has navigated international fame, relentless media scrutiny, and the pressures of one of the most visible families in history. She is a mother, a wife, a public figure, and a private individual all at once. She has been celebrated for her charity work, condemned for her perceived missteps, and constantly dissected in ways most people could never endure. And yet, she made a move that was entirely within her rights, at least from her perspective. The pushback she received, however, was swift and absolute. The message was clear. Certain boundaries could not be crossed. Certain expectations must remain untouchable, and those who try to cross them risk alienation. But this isn't just about Meghan. This is about the monarchy itself. The royal family operates on traditions that have been built over centuries. Titles are handed down with care, public appearances are meticulously coordinated, and the slightest deviation can have massive consequences. When someone disrupts that balance, it sends ripples throughout the institution. And for Charles and William, Meghan's request was more than a disruption, it was a warning signal. It indicated that personal ambition and public perception could threaten the carefully maintained order of the royal household. That is why their response was not just anger, it was action, a complete ban, a definitive statement. The tension doesn't stop there. Meghan's allies, friends, and confidants were thrown into the storm as well. Everyone connected to her suddenly found themselves navigating an intricate maze of loyalty, secrecy, and pressure. Some offered support, others advised caution. Few understood the full scope of the royal reaction. Meanwhile, The media, ever vigilant, began piecing together fragments of information. Every leaked message, every unconfirmed report, every hint of discord fueled speculation. Headlines exploded. Social media lit up. Fans and critics alike weighed in, some defending Meghan's right to her request, others questioning the wisdom of challenging royal protocol. The world was watching, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Even within the palace walls, there was confusion. Staff members whispered about secret meetings, about discussions held in the dead of night, and about a plan that was both ruthless and calculated. The ban was not a temporary measure. It was not a request for reflection. It was a declaration, a signal that boundaries had been crossed and consequences would follow. Charles and William, who are normally careful with public perception, were unapologetic. Sources described the atmosphere as tense, almost palpable, with advisors fearing that any misstep could escalate the situation further. Yet, for Meghan, the reality of the ban was deeply personal. She suddenly found herself isolated from the family she had married into, shut out from conversations she once thought were accessible, and facing the full weight of royal authority. Every move she considered had to account for the ban. Every interaction could have consequences, and every decision carried immense emotional weight. The public might see glamour, wealth, and influence, but behind the scenes, it was a battle for recognition, respect, and survival within a rigid system that does not tolerate challenge lightly. And then there's the timing. This confrontation didn't happen in a vacuum. Recent events, the shifting public perception, ongoing media scrutiny, and upcoming royal functions added fuel to the fire. The timing of Meghan's request, intentionally or not, coincided with a period when the family could least afford public controversy. For Charles and William, it wasn't just about titles. It was about optics, control, and the preservation of tradition in the face of relentless change. So what happens next? That's the question on everyone's mind. Will Meghan relent? Will she find a way to navigate the ban? Or will this confrontation escalate further? And what does this mean for the monarchy's future, for the public's perception, and for the fragile relationship between family and tradition? The answers remain uncertain, shrouded in secrecy, and brimming with tension. But one thing is clear. The events that unfolded over this request are unlike anything seen in recent royal history. We will explore the forbidden request itself, the fury behind closed palace doors, Meghan's personal response, historical precedents, media reactions, and the internal dynamics between Charles, William, and Meghan. Each revelation adds another layer to this unfolding drama, painting a picture of a family at odds, a woman navigating unprecedented pressure, and a system struggling to maintain order in the face of challenge. Imagine sending a simple note, a message you thought would be considered reasonable, only to find it detonates a storm you could never have predicted. That's exactly what happened when Meghan Markle put forward her request for a new title. On the surface, it may have seemed innocent, even modest, a small recognition, a formal acknowledgement of her role within the royal family. But in reality, it was anything but simple. Within hours, palace walls were buzzing, whispered conversations escalated to heated discussions, and Charles and William were in a rare, unrestrained fury. How could a single request ignite such an extraordinary reaction? Let's step into the scene. It was a quiet morning in one of the royal estates, the kind of morning when courtiers expected routine. But Meghan's note changed everything. According to insiders, the message was precise, polite in tone, and formal in structure, but loaded with implication. She wasn't just asking for a title. She was asserting her place, subtly challenging the traditional hierarchy, and signaling that she expected the acknowledgement of her role. It wasn't just the request itself, it was what it represented: ambition, agency, and independence within an institution that prizes obedience, discretion, and tradition above all else. Charles, known for his measured composure, read the request and reportedly did not take it lightly. William, usually careful in his public displays of emotion, immediately recognized the implications. For the first time in a long while, the father-son duo agreed on something with absolute certainty. This request could not stand. Their reaction was swift and decisive. Advisors were summoned. Meetings were called. Every word, every nuance, was analyzed. There was no room for interpretation. The palace saw not a courteous ask but a provocation, a direct challenge to centuries of tradition and the careful maintenance of hierarchy. But what exactly was in the request? Details remain partially shrouded in secrecy, but insiders have shared hints. Meghan reportedly requested a title that would elevate her status within the family, something that would be visible, public, and symbolically significant. Some suggest she sought a title tied to a specific region or ceremonial responsibility, one traditionally reserved for blood relatives or long-standing members of the royal lineage. Others speculate that her request was intended to create a legacy, a symbolic mark that would endure beyond her immediate presence. Whatever the exact wording, the reaction it provoked was immediate and dramatic. The concept of titles in the royal family is not trivial. They are more than just labels. They are a system of power, recognition, and hierarchy that has evolved over centuries. Each title carries historical weight, implying lineage, responsibility, and influence. By requesting a new title, Meghan was not simply asking for a name. She was asking for authority, acknowledgement, and symbolic power. And within the confines of the royal system, that is a delicate, almost dangerous proposition. It's a move that can shift perceptions, upset long-established hierarchies, and force the institution to confront questions about its relevance, fairness, and adaptation to modern times. So why did Meghan make the request? The motivations, of course, are complex. Some argue it was a strategic move, designed to cement her role and ensure recognition for her contributions and visibility. Others say it was personal, a desire for acknowledgement from a family that had often been critical, scrutinizing, and at times dismissive. It may have been a combination of both, a personal statement and a calculated effort to secure her legacy. In any case, the request itself became a lightning rod, igniting an explosive mix of protocol, emotion, and family politics. Now, consider the palace's perspective. To Charles and William, the request was unprecedented. The tone, the timing, and the underlying message were all problematic. This wasn't just a matter of protocol being bent. It was about control, about the balance of power, and about maintaining the delicate image of the monarchy in a world that constantly scrutinizes every misstep. In their eyes, allowing this request to move forward could set a dangerous precedent, that personal ambition and public pressure could override tradition, hierarchy, and carefully maintained rules. The stakes were enormous. The reaction was immediate. Advisors report that Charles and William convened in private, quickly formulating a plan of action. Meetings that were supposed to be brief became intense, lasting hours, with voices raised and tempers flaring. Every possible scenario was considered, ignoring the request, negotiating, or outright refusal. Ultimately, they chose a path that sent the clearest possible message. The request would be denied, and Meghan would face strict limitations in her communication with them going forward. Sources describe this as a total ban, an unprecedented move in the modern royal family. Meghan's allies were, naturally, alarmed. Friends, advisors, and close confidants scrambled to understand the fallout. Some feared that this would escalate into a public confrontation. Others worried about her emotional well-being. The tension was palpable, and rumors began circulating about secret meetings, intercepted messages, and private confrontations. For Meghan, the request that had seemed reasonable, justified, and necessary suddenly became a source of isolation and scrutiny. She was at the center of a storm she could not control, and every step she took carried enormous risk. And then there was the media. The palace may have tried to contain the situation, but once whispers leaked, the world took notice. Headlines erupted, social media exploded, and the narrative began to form. Meghan had overstepped, challenged tradition, and faced the wrath of the most powerful men in the monarchy. Analysts, journalists, and royal commentators debated the implications, dissecting every word, gesture, and expression. Public opinion polarized. Supporters rallied behind Meghan, criticizing the monarchy for its rigidity. Detractors applauded Charles and William for defending tradition. The stage was set for a drama that would unfold on both private and public fronts. The emotional stakes were just as high. For Meghan, the request was more than ceremonial. It was deeply personal. It represented recognition, respect, and an affirmation of her place within a system that had often seemed unwelcoming. For Charles and William, the reaction was about maintaining control, protecting the monarchy, and defending centuries of protocol that, if challenged, could lead to chaos. These were not abstract concepts. These were human emotions: pride, ambition, fear, anger, and loyalty, all colliding in ways that few outsiders could fully comprehend. And yet, amidst the tension, there were contradictions and surprises. While the request was denied, it also highlighted Meghan's growing influence. Her ability to make the palace react, to command attention, and to disrupt centuries of tradition, even temporarily, was remarkable. It was a testament to her persistence, her courage, and her willingness to challenge an institution that rarely bends. But it also made her a target, a lightning rod for criticism, and a figure whose every move would now be scrutinized even more closely than before. So what happens next? How does a woman navigate being completely shut out from the family she married into? How does a monarchy enforce a ban without appearing authoritarian? And what are the consequences, not just for Meghan, but for the delicate balance of power, public perception, and the institution itself? These are questions that have no easy answers.